Nora Hale tried to step down like a lady, but her leg folded. Pain ripped through her ribs and stole her breath. The station fell quiet, then filled with stares. Someone muttered, "Male bride," like it was a stain. Nora gripped the coach door until her fingers ached. She forced her chin up anyway, even as her vision swam. A man pushed through the crowd and caught her before she hit the dirt. His arms were strong, but careful, like he knew where she hurt. He held her close and she felt how steady he was. "I have you," he said, voice low, and it sounded final. Nora opened her mouth to apologize, then stopped. Would this stranger see her as trouble and let go? 3 days earlier, bandits had stopped the stage out on the open road. They took money first, then they took what they wanted. Slow and mean. Nora's trunk had held her wedding dress, her mother's pearls, and every letter she had saved from Wyoming. She tried to shield it, and a rifle butt slammed into her ribs. A boot caught her leg and left it throbbing hot. The driver never stopped after, not even for a doctor. Now the driver called out, loud enough for all to hear, asking who was here for Boone Maddox's bride. Nora wished she could sink into the dust. The man holding her turned his head, and his eyes went hard. "That is her," he said, then looked back to Nora. "I am Cal Mercer," he added, calm and certain. "You carried her like this for days," Cal said to the driver, and the words cut clean. Cal lifted Nora before she could argue, and he carried her straight to the doctor. The town blurred past in sun and dust and whispers. Nora kept her cheek against his shoulder because it was the only steady thing. He smelled of leather and sweat and clean earth. "I am sorry," she whispered, hating how small she sounded. "Stop that," he answered, and his grip tightened just enough to reassure her. Doc Hart's office was cramped and bright, with jars on shelves and clean cloth on a table. Cal set Nora down gentle, then stayed close when the doctor told him to wait outside. "She is hurt and she is scared," Cal said, "and she will not sit alone in here," he told the doctor. Nora heard herself say, "Please stay," because the thought of being left made her chest go tight. Doc Hart checked her ribs, wrist, brow, and leg, then cleaned and wrapped what he could. "Nothing is broken," the doctor said, "but bruised ribs can make you breathe shallow," he warned. Doc Hart asked when Nora last ate, and she could not answer without thinking hard. The doctor gave a small bottle for pain and a tonic for strength. He told her to rest, drink water, and keep the cuts clean. Then he looked at Cal and asked where she would stay, since gossip moved fast in Red Ridge. Cal said the boarding house until the wedding, like it was the safest choice. Nora's stomach tightened at the thought of being watched again. Nora sat up too fast and regretted it, but pride carried her through. She stared at Cal and said, "I did not come all this way to be stored away like a damaged parcel," and her voice surprised even her. She told him she would rather hear the truth than be hidden for other people's comfort. If he had changed his mind after seeing her bruises, she needed him to say it. Cal stepped closer, eyes fixed on hers. "I want you with me," he said, and the room went still. "Not because I pity you," he added, "but because you belong in my home," he said. Cal arranged a chaperone before Doc Hart could argue again. Mrs. Lottie Crane arrived with kind eyes and a firm voice, and she treated Nora like a neighbor, not a spectacle. Cal drove them out in a sturdy wagon, reins in one hand, the other steadying Nora when the road jolted. The Mercer Ranch sat in a shallow valley, a log house with a wide porch and a barn behind it. A boy ran out, then froze when he saw Nora's injuries. Cal sent him for water and told him to keep quiet, and the boy bolted. Inside, the house was plain and clean, built for hard winters and harder work. Cal chose the main bedroom because the bed was soft and the morning light was good. He told Mrs. Crane he would sleep in the barn loft to keep tongues quiet, even with her as chaperone. Mrs. Crane helped Nora into a clean nightdress and fed her stew in slow bites. Nora's hands shook, but the warmth in her belly helped her breathe again. She lay back and listened to the house settle, afraid to hope. Later, when the lamp burned low, Cal came to the doorway and stopped. He held his hat in both hands like he did not know where to put them. "You are safe here," he said, voice rough. "And you are home now," he told her. Nora swallowed and asked the question she had been avoiding. "Are those bandits still out there?" she said, and her voice shook. Cal's eyes flicked to the dark window. "Yes," he answered. "And I ride tonight," he said. Cal did not sleep before he rode. Nora could tell by the way he moved at dawn, quiet and tight, like a man counting steps. Mrs. Crane brewed coffee and pressed a biscuit into his hand. He barely tasted it. He checked the cinch twice, then stood at the porch rail and looked back at the house. Nora watched from the doorway, wrapped in a shawl, ribs aching with every breath she tried to hide. "You rest," he said. "I will be back." "When?" she asked. "Soon," he said, and that was all he gave her. Hooves faded into the open land. The quiet after felt too big. Nora sat through the morning light, letting Mrs. Crane change the bandage on her leg and remind her to drink water. Each small task helped keep fear from taking root. Still, when noon passed and the sky leaned west, worry gnawed at her chest. The hours stretched. The house creaked. A hawk cried once and moved on. Nora tried to read, then set the book aside. She counted breaths instead. She told herself she had survived worse than waiting. She told herself Cal was careful. She told herself to trust a man who had caught her without asking for anything in return. Near dusk, a rider appeared at the fence line. Nora stood too fast and winced, then laughed at herself when it turned out to be the sheriff. He dismounted slow, hat in hand, eyes tired. "Ma'am," he said, "Mercer is all right." Nora felt the relief hit like a wave and had to grip the doorframe to stay upright. The sheriff spoke plain. They had tracked the bandits to a dry cut north of the river. The men tried to scatter. One fired wild. No one was hit. They were taken alive. "We will return what we can," he said. "If you can list what was stolen, we will look." Nora nodded, throat tight, and named her dress, the letters, the pearls. The sheriff wrote it all down and tipped his hat before riding off. Cal returned after dark, dust on his coat and wear in his eyes. He stopped short when he saw Nora awake, then crossed the porch in 2 strides. He did not touch her right away. He searched her face like a man making sure of something important. "You waited," he said. "I said I would," she answered. He told her the rest over stew and lamplight. How the men had folded once they were surrounded. How one laughed until the cuffs went on. Cal's voice stayed even, but his jaw set hard. When he finished, Nora reached for his hand without thinking. He took it and held on, careful of her wrist. The room felt steadier with that simple contact. The next days fell into a quiet pattern. Nora healed, inch by inch. Mrs. Crane kept watch and did not let pride undo progress. Cal worked the ranch and came back with small offerings, a handful of wildflowers. A clean bandage folded just so. Once, a pencil and a ledger he found in town. "You wrote about accounts," he said. "Thought you might want it." Nora smiled, and something warm settled between them. They talked in the evenings. Not speeches, just the truth, said plain. Cal told her about his sister, gone in a spring flood when the water ran fast and mean. He had rebuilt the house after, changed walls and doors so the echoes would stop haunting him. Nora told him about Boston, the quiet shame after her father died, the way doors closed without slamming. They did not rush the hard parts, they let them breathe. One afternoon, Mrs. Crane returned from town with news. A trunk had been found in the bandits' camp. It was battered, but whole. The sheriff would bring it by. Nora sat very still, afraid to move the hope in her chest. When the wagon finally came, Cal lifted the trunk down himself. He set it inside and stepped back, giving her space. The lid creaked. Inside lay her dress, wrinkled but intact. Beneath it the letters tied with a blue ribbon. Nora pressed them to her chest and cried, quiet and fierce. Cal stayed where he was, hands at his sides, until she looked up. Then he came closer and rested a hand on her shoulder. Nothing more, nothing less. That night, Nora slept without dreaming for the first time since the road. Morning came soft. Cal asked, careful, if she wanted to return to town until the wedding. Nora shook her head. I want to stay, she said, if you will have me. He did not answer right away. He nodded once, like a vow made to himself. I will have you, he said. They set a date without fuss. Mrs. Crane agreed to stay until then. Cal slept in the loft and did not complain. He brought flowers every morning anyway. He taught Nora the names of the horses and how to read the wind by the grass. She showed him how to order supplies and keep records clean. When her leg allowed it, they walked to the creek and back, slow and steady. On the day her bruises turned yellow, Nora asked for a kiss. Cal hesitated only long enough to be sure. It was gentle and brief and full of promise. He pulled back first. I want you choosing me, he said. Not because you owe me. Nora met his eyes. I am, she said, every day. The town began to notice before Nora was ready to be seen. Word traveled the way it always did on the frontier, carried on boots and glances. Some were kind, some were careful. A few were sharp. Mrs. Crane ran interference when she could, meeting looks with a calm stare that ended most questions. Cal did not hide Nora, but he did not parade her either. He let time do its work. Nora healed in small, honest ways. She learned the rhythm of the ranch and the limits of her body. When pain flared, she rested. When strength returned, she used it. She kept the ledger Cal had found and set the numbers straight. It felt good to make order from scraps. Cal watched her work once, leaning in the doorway, and nodded like he had just seen proof of something he already believed. The sheriff returned on a clear morning with a crate tied down behind his saddle. He carried it into the house himself and set it on the table. Inside were things from many travelers, sorted with care. Nora's pearls lay wrapped in cloth. Her photograph rested face down, unharmed. The sheriff handed her a bundle last. The letters were there, creased but whole. Nora thanked him and meant it with everything she had. When the door closed, she sat and breathed, letting the past settle where it belonged. Cal asked if she wanted the town to see her dress before the day. Nora shook her head. I want it to be for us, she said. He agreed. They spoke about the ceremony in plain terms. A preacher from Red Ridge. Chairs set by the cottonwood. Food that made sense. No speeches that went long. Mrs. Crane approved and began planning without fuss. Cal rode less at night once the bandits were jailed. When he did leave, he said where and when. He did not promise more than he could give. Nora learned to live with that honesty. She waited on the porch with a lamp and watched the dark thin at the edges. When he returned, she asked only if he was whole. He always was. One afternoon, Nora insisted on walking into town. Mrs. Crane went with her, arms steady, eyes forward. The street paused as they passed. A woman from the mercantile smiled and said she was glad Nora had arrived. A man looked away. A boy tipped his hat and ran. It was enough. Nora bought cloth and thread and felt like herself again. At the doctor's, Doc Hart cleared her for light work and frowned at Cal until he promised not to push her. Cal smiled the way he did when he meant yes. On the way back, they stopped at the creek. Nora sat on a flat stone and watched the water move around it. This place keeps going, she said, even when it hits trouble. Cal nodded. So do we, he said. The night before the wedding brought a wind that rattled the eaves. Cal slept in the loft again, though Mrs. Crane teased him for it. Nora lay awake and thought about the road behind her. She thought about the first fall on the arms that caught her. She did not wonder if she belonged anymore. She wondered how to be worthy of what she had been given. Morning came bright. Mrs. Crane helped Nora dress, hands sure and kind. The gown fit like a promise kept. Nora's bruise above her brow had faded to a pale line. Mrs. Berspestropata Crane pinned Nora's hair with simple care and tucked a small flower behind her ear. You look like yourself, she said. Nora smiled. That was all she wanted. Guests arrived in ones and twos. Cal stood by the cottonwood with the preacher and tried not to pace. When Nora stepped out, the wind eased. Cal lifted his eyes and forgot to breathe. The walk felt long and short all at once. When Nora reached him, he took her hands and held them like something precious. The vows were plain and spoken steady. Nora promised partnership and truth. Cal promised protection and respect. The rings were simple. The kiss was gentle and certain. Applause rose and fell. Someone laughed. Someone cried. Mrs. Crane wiped her eyes and pretended not to. They ate and talked and let the day be what it was. Cal danced with Nora once, careful and proud. When the sun leaned west, the guests drifted away. Mrs. Crane took her leave with a smile that said she would visit often. The house settled into quiet again. On the porch at dusk, Cal and Nora stood side by side. The sky burned gold at the edges. Cal took Nora's hand. "I meant it," he said. "Every word." Nora squeezed his fingers. "So did I," she answered. He carried her over the threshold because she asked him to. Inside, the lamp glowed warm. Later, when the house slept, Cal lay awake and listened to Nora breathe. He rested his hand over hers and felt the calm settle deep. Outside, the land held steady. Inside, something new took root. Not loud, not fragile, just true. Married life did not arrive with trumpets or speeches. It came quietly, in the way Cal set a second cup on the table without asking, and in the way Nora learned the creak of each board before it sounded. Mornings began with coffee and light through the east window. Nights ended with the lamp turned low and the world finally still. Nora moved carefully at first. Her ribs still ached when she laughed too hard. Cal noticed without staring. He slowed his steps to match hers and waited when she needed rest. He never called it patience. He just did it. Mrs. Crane stayed on through the first week, then left with a firm hug and a list of instructions that made Cal grin and obey. The town watched from a distance. A few came by with bread or questions. Most waited to see how Nora would wear the place. She wore it honest. She learned which days the creek ran high and which fences needed watching. She kept the books and found leaks where money slipped away unnoticed. Cal listened and changed what needed changing. It made the work lighter for both of them. One night, Cal told her the sheriff would return with final word on the bandits. Nora felt the old fear stir, then settle. She had learned how to sit with it. When the sheriff came, he spoke plain. The men were tried and sentenced. The road would be safer now. Nora thanked him and meant the future as much as the past. A week later, the desk arrived. Cal brought it in himself, breath tight with effort, and something else. The wood was old and solid, the surface scarred but true. "It was my sister's," he said, setting it by the window. "She wrote at it." Nora ran her hand along the grain and understood the gift. "I will honor it," she said. Cal nodded once, relief clear. Nora wrote that night, not for anyone else. Just to set the day straight. Cal read at the table, boots off, hat set aside. When she finished, she closed the book and felt a calm she had not known before. The house felt complete. Work pressed in with the season. Cal rode out early and came back dusty. Nora kept pace with ledgers and orders. They talked through plans and costs. They disagreed without raising voices and found better answers together. When Nora's leg flared, Cal took the long way around tasks so she would not see the strain. She saw it anyway and thanked him by resting. Neighbors warmed. A rancher asked Nora to help with his accounts. She agreed and charged nothing. Cal watched the respect grow and said nothing. At supper, he asked if she wanted to make it a practice. Nora thought it through and nodded. "We will see," she said, "one step at a time." Storm clouds gathered late one afternoon. Wind rose fast and bent the grass flat. Cal came in with a look that said trouble. A fence had gone down near the wash. He asked if Nora wanted to stay back. She shook her head and pulled on her coat. They moved together, careful and quick. The rain came hard. The fence held with effort and teamwork. When they finished, soaked and laughing, Nora felt a quiet pride settle deep. That night Cal held her while the rain drummed the roof. "I worry," he said, honest as always. "I do too," she answered. They did not promise to stop worrying. They promised to speak it. The first real snow fell early. Nora learned the weight of cold, and the kindness of fires kept steady. She learned to read the sky for what it would bring. Cal taught her to knot rope without freezing fingers. She taught him to plan for winter stores without panic. They took turns being strong. A letter arrived from the east with neat writing and a careful tone. A women's paper asked if Nora would write about life on the ranch. Nora read it twice and set it down. Cal waited. "Do you want to?" he asked. Nora nodded slowly. "I do." He smiled like he had known all along. She wrote in the evenings at the desk by the window. She wrote plain truth about work and partnership and the cost of fear. The editor wrote back pleased. Letters followed from women who saw themselves in the lines. Nora answered when she could. Cal read every piece and said little, which meant he was proud. Winter tightened its grip. They set rope lines between house and barn and laughed at the way the wind stole words. Nights grew long. They played cards. Cal learned chess and lost with good humor. Nora read aloud until the lamp sputtered. The house held warmth like a promise kept. Late one night, Nora woke with a hand on her belly and a feeling she could not name.